Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started. We have some quick housekeeping items that we'll get through here as people continue to join. But we're pretty close, I think, to the final number here. And I'm Tim Buscalia. I'm the host for today's webinar. I manage the Global Solutions Department here on behalf of ARC. We manage the largest enterprise type customers. I've been working in the scan and document management industry for 20 years. One of our largest jobs we just finished last year did set quite a few records for the company, and I think maybe even nationwide, for converting a massive number of boxes for a wide range of content for a company based in the Southeast, home of the Carolina Panthers. That's in the energy industry. If anybody would like to chat with me about that particular customer, our expertise there, but that dealt with a very broad range of content related to their customers, related to their internal employees, both state and federal guidelines for operating nuclear facilities, things like that. It was a very complicated set of content, as well as a huge quantity across 27 different locations, all consolidated and done in a record of 90 days. I'd love to chat with anybody about that, but we'll save some of those questions for the end. We're gonna get right into a few things. And so here are a few housekeeping items. Real quick, we're recording today's webinar. It'll be distributed to all the attendees. All of the video, audio, etc. will be distributed to everyone. So if there are any questions that anybody would like answered, it will be available to you. Or if you'd like to go deeper into any of the content, it will be available to you if we don't cover it today. Everybody is on mute, but we encourage you to please put any questions you may have into the chat window. Just type away in there. We will definitely get to your questions. We're going to keep our webinar right to 30 minutes. Anybody who needs to drop off after the 30-minute mark, we will record everything. But if you would like your questions answered live, if you'd like to have questions answered directly from one of the subject matter experts I have here on the call, please wait. We will get to that right at the 30-minute mark. Of course, this webinar is guidance only. If you have local, state, or federal guidelines you're trying to follow in regards to your operations, please refer to them. This is for guidance purposes only. Okay, so for those of you who are on this call, hopefully you're here. This is like the announcement from Southwest Airlines. You're going to fly today to HIPAA and PHI. If that is not your destination, you're on the wrong webinar. This webinar is for persons who are looking to embark on a journey to transform their paper-based document workflows into electronic ones, or are in the process of managing both forms of information. That is, that they have some paper-based workflows, and they also have some that are in digital form, which is the case for most customers. We will also help with how do you get the most security out of those documents? How do you transform from a paper-based one to a digital one so you have a secure environment? Then we'll get into some case studies in regards to exactly how this gets done. So let me go to my poll question here first. And this is a trick question, right? What's the difference between HIPAA and HIPAA? So two different spellings. And so what is the difference here, right? HIPAA prohibits businesses from asking patrons to show proof of vaccination, patient access. Both HIPAA and HIPAA prohibit anyone from asking for health information, or there's only one real regulation, and the other one's made up by people on the internet. So go ahead and submit your answers here, and we'll see the results here. We'll give it a couple of minutes. Okay, I can't see the responses here. So if those can come up here. Okay, there we go. Pretty good. First answer, prohibits business from asking, 6%. That is an incorrect response. HIPAA secures patient access is 21%. HIPAA, HIPPA. Both HIPAA and HIPAA prohibit anyone from asking for 30%. The last one is there is one real regulation, the other is made up. That's the only correct answer here. And 44% of us got this correctly, right? HIPAA is a health and regulatory environment. And that health and regulatory environment gives us the ability to be able to manage against the regulation. The other HIPAA one is something that was made up. Health information portability, health insurance is the right one. And the other one is something that's just was made up to help regulate the environment based upon the social need of the day. It has nothing to do with reality. We're going to get into 3 elements: HIPAA, the true HIPAA, PHI, and a little bit on PII, personal identifiable information. Okay, real quick, rate your knowledge here, right? So 1 being very little knowledge, 1 being expert. And so I'd love to see the responses here, just so we know how to gauge the information, right? We're gonna tailor this information. This is a 3-part series. We've done some other webinars on content management. This one for HIPAA and PHI has had a tremendous response from our customers. And so we're going to make this a 3-part series. This will be the first one. So please, let's see here what the answers are for the poll here. I don't see the poll questions popping up. Okay, we're going to get to this one a little bit later. I'm not sure why. There must be some technical reason why the poll question is not coming up. Okay, there it is. Maybe it's just a little slow here on my end. So please rate your own knowledge of what HIPAA is, what PHI is, and what we have in regards to managing the content. This will help us gauge our responses from our 2 panelists. Okay, let's go ahead and put up the poll response. Oh, great! This is really good. This is a very even blend. A few have none. There's quite a few beginners out there, and neutral. So beginners 40%, neutral is 25%, intermediates 27%. So nobody here is really qualifying themselves as expert. Very few people. 7% of the folks here are rating themselves as expert. So this is a really good webinar for you. And of course, if you have questions that we aren't answering, well, we will get to them at the end. Our 2 panelists, I love this. These are 2 people I've worked with for a long, long time to make success out of my customers, Vince Pingle and Uday Patharana. And both of them have worked with us for a long, long time in regards to converting customers into a digital format. Vince, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Vince, you're on mute. We can't hear you.
I am sorry for that. Now you should hear me.
Yes.
Hey, so thank you for joining us. Good morning, good afternoon. My name is Vince Pingle. I'm the general manager for our AIM operations. I oversee our AIM operations in the US and Canada. I've been involved in document imaging. Wherever I say AIM, what I'm speaking of is document imaging. I've been in the document imaging game since 1991, so I've got quite a bit of experience, seen a lot of projects over the 30+ years in this world, and happy to serve on this panel today. Thank you.
Yeah, super, Vince. Yeah, that's great. We call him the superstar. Vince is the go-to for any intricacies of a scan project. Uday, good morning. Give us a little bit about yourself. Tell us what you've been doing.
Good morning, good afternoon to everybody. My name is Uday Patirana. I work as the Director of Regional Operations for Document Scanning Services at ARC. I have been in the document imaging industry for 19 plus years. And during this time, I have worked with hundreds of customers. Some of the customers are very small, some of them are very large. And in these projects, we handle a lot of PHI, PII type of records. So I'm happy to share my experience in this panel today.
No, we're happy to get it, and it's a pleasure to serve alongside both of you folks. Again, the knowledge and expertise when it comes to guiding a customer through this process and the way we've built the workflow over the years is pretty incredible. It is amazing that we have been able to accomplish so much. For us, just as a sidebar to what we do here at work, we're a big document management and services firm, but the amount of scanning requirement that has increased through the pandemic and post-pandemic is incredible. It's largely from work from home and the need to secure those documents and make them widely accessible. And so the explosion of need here is in part why we're doing this webinar, because we get so many questions in regards to how to do it, what to do. And the biggest one is really right here, right? How do you know when to keep HIPAA processes in place? Like, it's such a mysterious area because it's a regulation. It's not a law. It's a regulatory environment, and getting compliance is up to certified boards, not necessarily legal entities. However, you can find yourself in legal trouble if you don't follow them. So this is a big area that we're going to get into, and Vince and Uday are going to talk a little bit about how to keep yourself secure. So when you do scan them, right, when you take them from a paper-based workflow and convert them into a digital one, what do you need to be aware of, right? How are you increasing your compliance with the digital workflow when you're going from paper-based storage, and when you can see the storage versus when you can't see the storage? How is it more secure in the latter? Lastly, what other benefits should you expect to have, right? What kind of benefits should a client expect when they have converted their documents? You don't just want to be able to say you're in compliance, you want to improve what you had before. Okay, so this is a standard workflow for most conversion processes. However, companies that specialize in HIPAA, PHI, personal health information, and PII, personally identifiable information, there are some key areas that you need to consider, whether you use a company like ARC, ARC Document Solutions, or if you use anybody. As you're evaluating your provider, there are some key areas that you need to ask questions about. Uday is going to tell us about a case study where we took over from somebody else who failed. That failed to provide the security and quality assurance throughout the process, and we had to take over and provide that service. So these are the areas that are very important for you to think about, whether you're doing it internally. Vince will talk to you about a case where we actually had to have such security where we have to do it on site for that particular customer. It would not even allow us to take that content off site. But you need to make sure first the documents are secure, that they are sealed and tamper-proof, because it's not about what happens if the information gets leaked or what could happen if it gets leaked. It is important for you to be able to show it can't get leaked, that it can't be seen, that you've taken every foreseeable opportunity to be able to keep that document secure, because this process is the same that we would use for the Department of Defense. This is the same process we would use for other secure and confidential documentation to be sure that we can prove at every step of that chain of custody is kept secure. First thing, seal the documents. Second thing that you need to ensure for confidential type of data is it's being transported in a secure truck facility that's trackable, and you can do all those types of things. The third major component is it's in a secure and surveilled storage area. That storage area needs to be free from cell phones, needs to be free from windows, needs to be free from access. Doors need to have automatic locks. Doors need to be able to shut and close automatically, things like that. And then as you move along through that entire process, you have to make sure after the document has been scanned, that they return in a secure environment. Okay, so I'm going to quickly get into the case studies. These case studies are very interesting. Well, what was the size of the job? What unique challenges were presented here? And what was the resolution? How did the customer benefit from this from this conversion? So the first one here, we're going to start with Vince. Vince, tell us about the challenge you were presented with Cleveland University.
Yeah, so Cleveland University is a college for focused on chiropractic, and on that, as part of that college, part of the education program, they have a practitioner clinic that they use for treating live patients, and as part of their education, of course, training their students in that clinic. Years ago, of course, all the records were in hard copy when they started that clinic. And then in recent years, they moved to an electronic records management system. And so they basically had current records in electronic form. They had old records in hard copy. Those old records are stored in a storage room, which was unproductive for that space. So what they really needed was they wanted to turn that space into more productive space for them.
A common issue that we see across almost all of our customers today, which is an excess of real estate they want to repurpose or get rid of. Yeah, keep going. And so, when you, go ahead.
So part of the challenge was to repurpose that space. Part of the challenge was to make sure that in converting the paper into electronic, that they maintain their compliance issues for not only HIPAA, but in maintaining those records for those patients. They have to keep those records available as long as that patient lives.
Sure. Right.
And then so they asked us, and they were concerned about security. And so, we offered, hey, to handle that in the most secure way possible, let's come on site. That way those records never leave their custody, never leave their possession or their facility. And so we moved teams of people on site, experts with the right equipment, and we began a process of capturing all those records into digital form, turning the digital information over and loading it into their electronic records management system. And then so the hard copy can then be shredded or destroyed.
Sure. So they needed to get the space back. They also needed you to deal with the confidentiality for HIPAA and PHI. They also need you to build the plane while you flew it, because they needed to be able to access these documents on a fluid basis while you were in there transitioning the documents from its old form to the new form.
Absolutely. Right? And our chain of custody controls, anytime anybody's looking for this kind of service, really focus on the chain of custody and the controls at the document level. Because that's key in being able to provide access to the customer to a particular record that they might need at that moment.
Right. All really great points. Uday's got a really good, interesting case here from the County of Montgomery, because a much different environment, a municipal environment that's dealing with thousands of different types of environment and people associated to who has this content. Uday, tell us a little bit about the problem that they were having and what you needed to do to resolve it.
Sure, Ted. So county archives in Montgomery, Pennsylvania, they manage records belongs to multiple organizations in the county. So they have like 30,000, 40,000 containers of records. So one of the issues they have is they're moving to a new facility. So they don't want to take these documents with them. And at the same time, when they're managing hundreds of documents that belong to different ownerships, there is frequent requests to access certain files.
Yeah,
so
the same
they want
issue that Vince had.
Very similar, and they wanted to create like a paperless environment to overcome these issues. Like you mentioned, Ted, like you mentioned earlier, they try to work with a vendor. I don't think the vendor is qualified. They fail in multiple aspects. One of the areas they failed is in the chain of custody. The second area is the quality, multiple quality issues. So they were afraid whether anybody can serve this project and get it done properly. When they contacted us, we had to ensure our processes work for them and our quality standards and the process standards work and meet their compliance requirements. So,
right. So one of the things I want to emphasize here is in this case, right? So we call it chain of custody, but I think some term that's been applied to is loss of control, right? So whenever there's a loss of control of the document, there's risk of exposure, and so the control that you have to have for when you're dealing with the district attorney's office, the county clerk of courts, other proto notary departments, there is so much sensitive content there. And when you're talking about 10,000 boxes, all with active cases that need to be transitioned into an environment where they are ensuring that it's secure. It's no surprise they fired the first group, right? They lost the confidence that the chain of custody was in place, right? That there was loss of control, that these documents had risk of exposure. And that's the last thing a group like the district attorney would want to have. What did you do? How did you help fix that on their behalf and restore the confidence and get this job done?
So one of the first thing we did is having multiple conversations to understand the expectations and the risk associated with the project and understand the project goals. Then we plan the project with a pilot phase. In the pilot phase, we managed to cover the entire process as well as with, like digitizing large quantity.
A mini trial of the whole process for them up front.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So giving them a proof of a delivery as well as building the confidence on the quality aspects, chain of custody aspects, as well as we perform these services at ARC Secure HIPAA Compliance Service Center. So when we take large volumes of documents to our facility, we have to support the customer to access their documents on need basis. So we verified all those aspects in the pilot phase. And when the customer is happy with everything is working fine and the quality is meeting the expectations and compliances are all met, so we went ahead and planned the project in multiple phases and execute the project in that way.
Right. So one of the things that you mentioned here in this case study was a HIPAA compliant and SOC 2 related facility. And so in those cases, what I think most major providers have done is they have a regulatory group go and provide certification for those centers, and that's what you used in this case, right? On the ARC centers that are SOC 2 and HIPAA compliant. Is that correct?
Yes, so we are compliant in many other certifications as well, Ted. But in the HIPAA compliance, generally there is no like a governing body to certify you. Because it's simple like a compliance. But in our case, we hired like a reputed third-party organization to come on site and visit each and every center. They analyze all our physical, IT, and various process-related activities and give us kind of a confirmation that we are meeting all the HIPAA and various other certifications that we hold today.
Right. So what I want to emphasize there was, I think part of this process is a bit of due diligence by the customer as to not just what their goals are, but their level of confidence in the provider. For us, we want to ensure that we had a regulatory body give us some sort of certification that we are meeting all of the reasonable guidelines for HIPAA or SOC type regulatory issues. And so that way you have some level of assurance, right? That this is a competent provider. So as all of you are going into this process, that's what you should be doing as well, is looking to what type of certifications they have and what type of things that they have done to ensure the regulations have been met.
Yes.
Vince, you're up again for KVC Health System. This is an interesting one because this is a much different case. This case deals with the conversion of the documents into a readable form. There's one way to say, hey, we have access to the documents through searching and through indexing of those documents. But there's another one to say, hey, I want it to be like a storybook, because that's the way they use it today. Vince, tell us a little bit about KVC.
Yeah, so this is an interesting study. I'm always amazed at different places that you don't expect to find PHI, and then next thing you know, you're coming across PHI, and then therefore it's bound by the HIPAA regulations. KVC, one of their groups within that handles the placement of foster children into foster homes. And so each of the candidates that they used to have these very large 3-ring binders. So at the time that we did this project, they were handling about 1,100 candidates. And so there were a little more than 1,100 very large 3-ring binders. And these binders contained a lot of information about the candidates, who they were, their application, their medical situation, and various pieces of very private information. And so the challenge was having to move away from a hard copy bound system into something more portable, into an electronic form. And so, of course, we came in and we were able to take all that hard copy, get it all scanned, and move it into a digital platform that they were building for themselves.
Right. One thing I want to emphasize here is when you're taking content like this and you are creating it into a portable document format, PDF, and you're converting it into something that's readable on an iPad, you need to make sure the readability is there, right? You want to be able to go through it in a consumer type of way. So there needs to be the guidance from the customer as to what they want the final format to look like, how they want it to operate, right? One is be able to say it's going into FileNet, into, excuse me, a large repository, versus something that's in PDF that's readable on an iPad, and people need to quickly browse through pictures and content about a particular patient or person. And so that type of guidance, you need to ensure as you're selecting your provider that they're capable of doing things like that for you. We call it indexing, but customers, they just want to make sure it's readable, it's findable, searchable for that particular content. Any other comments on that, what you were able to do in this particular case, Vince?
Yeah, so we sat down with the customer. We talked to them about the system that they were building that was going to hold this electronic records and how they needed to search it. And we were able to come up with a way that we could index or assign metadata to each of the binders that would then be usable within their platform to be able to allow them to search. And also to be able to identify the sections within each binder. And so each binder had tabs, and tabs marked various sections. And, so we talked about, how would you like that to be displayed? And it was very simple to simply turn those tabs into PDF bookmarks, and then to make sure that their platform that's holding those PDFs had the ability to display those bookmarks. So they would simply click through the document on their iPad using bookmarks, much like they would flip through the pages in a binder using the tabs.
Right. Very important for the consultation is the point I'm having Vince make here, which is that the consultation is a very important part of this process. Whomever you go with, however you're doing it, you have to have some of your objectives outlined, right? And your provider should be able to respond with how it's going to get done, the actions for getting it done, and anything can be done as well. You should be capable of making it look just like it was in a binder, but it all comes at a cost. And so that consultation should be balancing the pros and cons of how much do you want to spend versus your final outcome. How often are you going to use this content, or how secure does it need to be? So lastly, what topics or content would you like ARC to see on the next webinar here? This is a free form answer. You can just type in here anything you would like to see ARC cover for the second version of this webinar. I've got a bunch more content. We're right at the 30-minute mark. We're going to get into the Q&A. So for those of you who are online, please type in your questions right now. Please take a minute for any questions you would like to have, or put this into the next webinar topic, things you'd like us to go deep into in regards to managing HIPAA, PHI, or PII type of data. We talk a lot about some of the things that we have been doing and some of the common questions and issues of, the biggest issue that I've really come across is getting started. There's so much intimidating content or qualities that need to be managed, the characteristics of the job. What do nothing tends to be the biggest, obstacle to getting things like this done. So if you have ideas for your next webinar topic, that's great. If not, we're going to get into some questions. I also have a few things to cover here in regards to some of this webinar. Anybody who's attended, your final quote is good for 10% for any direct attendees, right? Just put in this anywhere in the subject line or in your request for more information, HIPAA 23 for 10% off your final quote. That's good for 60 days. We're happy to do for the attendees. You already understand what you're getting into. So we are foregoing the evaluation fees, any fees associated to the assessments of large collections of group of boxes or multiple locations with boxes or file cabinets. And so we will forego the inspection fees for any of the attendees here. I have a few things to get through, but I'd like to just get any questions in there that people would like answered. I see a few in there right now. I'm going to go ahead. So some people seem to be putting some questions in there about discovery in regards to discovery on the content. So on the shared drives and things like that. So let's say you have digital content that's already digitized, right? How do you discover PHI and PII on the shared drives? That's very difficult. There are some modern systems out there that, like, let's say you're using OneDrive or using the Microsoft platform. They have some intelligent ways of using AI to detect things that they think are PII or PHI when it goes to be printed, for example. Right? There are some tools out there that can do that discovery automatically for you, but typically it's only when that information is being accessed. There are probably some tools out there that are intended for the discovery of content and data associated to PII and PHI in the electronic form. Primarily what we're talking about here on this webinar is that conversion. There's typically a legal form that says any content up to 7 years old that's in paper-based form must have a backup to it. That varies by industry, it varies by profession, it varies by whether it is patient-related data, where sometimes those years go much longer. There's a lot of administration regulation that's happened for the medical industry. It varies how long you need to keep it, but our job here is to help you make that conversion so you don't ever have to go backwards. So you can find the data, and the data that is marked as PHI, PII is available to you. Are there any other questions in regards to accessing content or things like that? Okay, so I'd like to get rid of my poll questions here. I'm going to go into some of the things that are really important for everybody to keep in mind from this content, right? So when you do when you're using HIPAA-related documents, you want to make sure you're increasing the accessibility, right? You want to make sure you are improving your workflow. You want to get rid of the space dedicated to storing paper. If you look at the cost of how much you're spending to be able to house people, you're using that same expense to house documents. Don't do that. It's needless expense. You should be looking for increased accessibility. You should be looking for space savings. You should be looking for increased governance. So when you're moving to a secure form, so Vince, you had a couple of comments associated to governance. How do you think you improve governance when you have gone to a digital type of platform?
So we have to look at, we'll have to look at what sort of regulations we're trying to meet, what constraints our customer has. We'll analyze those and we'll come up with a workflow in a process to make sure that we're meeting that particular regulation, whatever governance is. If it is involving PHI or HIPAA, then of course there's a lot of very serious and very strict controls that not only we have to have in place in the handling of our customers' information, but of course you have to have in place because you are in custody of that information and you also have to protect it as well.
Yeah, I think one of the things in the governance and security of the document is the old system, right? When you have any type of paper-based warehouse or repository, you have a check-in, check-out process. That check-in, check-out process is only as good as the people or the system or availability of it. For example, in the county of Montgomery, they had one central place where they were storing all these documents. You had to go there, check the documents out, hold them, do whatever you're going to do with them, and then return them basically like it was a library. When you go to a HIPAA type environment and you're going and containing that in a digital form, it's automatic. You can set automatic registries and processes to be able to allow access or disable access for persons who you want to restrict from that content. And that's automatic. And you can adapt to whatever environment you have to immediately make those documents available, but you also make them widely available to people who are working from home, working remotely, not available to go to that particular station, location to access those documents. And so the ability to be able to improve the security is inadvertently or consequentially making it also much easier to use and access that content, and you get traceability for whoever accessed it. For example, when it's digital, you can see exactly who and when and how much data that they have used. What did they access? How long did they access it? What was done with that document? Whereas when you have the old system, you can't really identify some of those things. It's much more difficult. Of course, one of the indirect benefits is the increased sustainability. Right, you're making a much more sustainable environment. You're no longer accessing paper. You're no longer storing paper. You're no longer air conditioning the paper because it's sitting in an office. You are no longer printing that paper because you're just viewing it on a screen. So the sustainability is improved.
Ted, there's a couple of questions out there. I'm happy to answer them if you'd like.
Okay, yeah, let's see what they are. Can you see them? I can't see them.
Yeah, somebody's asking if a resume would be considered PII. It's possible that a resume would contain PII, but as a general rule of thumb, I don't think the industry looks at resumes as being PII.
Absolutely. And so I think a resume, if it has information on there, like somebody chose to put their social security number on there, absolutely becomes your responsibility to deal with that social security number, because you could be in a situation where it becomes PII.
Yeah.
So there another question that came in here and said, what if I send you or another scanning company to be scanned, but I need to access them? How do I do that?
Okay.
How would you deal with that, right?
So I think this is something we would discuss with all our customers at very beginning of the projects to determine what is the expectations, how frequently they need to access these files. One of the things we do as part of our standard business process is to establish very good chain of custody. In that process, we will make sure where we collect the information, which drawers, which boxes. So we have a very, very detailed record of what content we have. So if customer calls in and tell us we are looking for records belongs that we picked up from this particular drawer, this particular room, this particular location, we can easily look into our databases and locate that box within a few minutes and get those files digitally to the customers within an agreed service level. Typically, this service level is like a 1 business day, and most of our customers are very good with that kind of service levels.
Right, because the very first, and again, we'll send out this webinar so everybody can see the content associated to it and the workflow. The workflow is a super important one when you're evaluating a provider, because it's basically a checklist for you to look as to what your provider is capable of doing. You can simply ask them based on the workflow. The very first step that happens with a document is it's barcoded. So when that box is sealed, tamper-resistant tape is provided there. What you then have is a barcode associated to what's in that box. So we can identify it, we can track it, and we can show what's in it. And when somebody's looking for content, we can go find that box, know its location, and be able to pull that content back out.
Yes, and I also want to have a kind of a feedback on the previous question on the PII. In some cases, if customer is not very sure about what they have and if they're concerned about the security, the best is to handle that digitization as a PHI or PII project. So the vendors or ARC can make sure we are following all the PHI, PII, HIPAA guidelines for projects that are not even containing this information.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. So I think that covers the questions that we were getting from the audience. I can't see the answer to the free-form questions. We will have those. We will address those as a part of the follow-up to this, to the webinar. We're coming, we're right 15 minutes over. We stopped right at the 30-minute mark. Any last questions? See, I think there's one more question that may have come in here. No, so I think we had we got all the questions there, and so if that is it, if there are no more questions, we will wrap it up here for this morning. Thank you very much, Uday. Thank you very much, Vince, for joining us here this morning to cover this content. It was really good. It's amazing what we do, with these types. You can see here this rotating imagery of the types of content that we typically get, and turn it into accessible, usable information that's very well secured. But we will follow up with each of you, just with the presentation and some of the things that you would see from webinar number 2 and webinar number 3. I think there'll be some good suggestions in regards to the things that people would like to have more of. If there are no more questions, I'm going to go ahead and end the webinar. Uday, Vince, anything else before we wrap it up?
No, just thank you for allowing us to speak to the team. Appreciate everybody who joined on today. Thanks.
Thank you. And I just want to say one final thing. Each project is different, so it's better to engage in a conversation with your vendor. And with that, thank you for attending, and thank you, Ted.
There was one more question. Oh, 2 more questions that came in. I'm going to go ahead and answer them. We will do our best to kind of summarize some of these questions as well from another attendee. So what about hosting the content? Right, there was a question about hosting content for persons who don't have a system. That's a very common question. There's a lot of big systems out there, OneDrive, Azure, Google, Box, etc., but they don't do a good job of being specialized for certain types of content. ARC has their own system. We have a system called SkySite that has the indexes and the processes built into how we scan documents and put them up into the cloud. There are some cloud restrictions, like our customer down there where the Carolina Panthers play. They don't use any cloud. Cloud is forbidden when you're dealing with nuclear facilities, period. It is not allowed by the nuclear administration that looks after anyone who's got a nuclear facility. But if you're a small practitioner or you're doing something very local, there are lots of really good programs, and you should absolutely expect that your provider gives you suggestions for what you should use that is available through them or through third-party providers, like I mentioned, the Googles and the boxes out there. They're good providers of just storing content. Dropbox is a great provider, but it's generally generic. It's not specialized to you. If you're a specialized operator, let's say you're a dentist or you're a quick med location or you're an insurance company, you may have some specialized requirements that you really want to address. And you should expect that your provider is able to give you that consultation. Last question was, will the PowerPoint be sent out? Yes, the PowerPoint will be converted to a PDF, and then it'll be sent out to everybody for their own use. And some of the snippets from the webinar will also be available, and as will all this audio. All the audio and all the Q&A and things like that will be available from this webinar. Okay, fantastic. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for staying past the 30-minute mark and hanging on this whole time to hear the questions responded to. Thank you again, Uday, Vince, and to our audience. It's fantastic. This was a very popular topic, and you'll see more of this coming in the future. Thank you again. Bye-bye.